and Jim Ozer, and I think Michael Deal and Kenan O'Neill are here too, as well as Akoya and T. We're all a part of the Crypto Product Lab. I haven't been a part of the other two calls that you've had, but I'm super excited to be here. And today I'll talk about the playtesting sessions that we've had for TCRs inside Consensys.
Awesome, thanks. Jeff is new, Jeff Emmett. Do you want to introduce yourself, Jeff? I saw you. I see you there. That's okay. We'll maybe move on. If someone from Claros is presenting today and they're new to the call, is there anyone from Claros that wants to present or just give a quick intro to the project?
Yeah, I'm there.
All right,
and Matt too, I guess. So hi, I'm Clément from Claros, and Matt is also from Claros. So we made a general purpose dispute resolution system, which is Claros, and the first application connected to it is a Dodge on Trial, which is a curated list of Dodge pictures. So Dodge on Trial is not exactly the kind of TCR most people think about TCR, because generally they think about TCR where people vote on everything. But it's a TCR which make calls to Claros, which then start a dispute resolution process, draw jurors, and then depending on the vote of the juror, item which are challenged get accepted or rejected. I guess we can talk a bit more about that later.
Thanks. Anyone else out there, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, I can do it. Hi, my name is Gregor. I'm from a project called Data Fund. One of the main things that we are working on is called Fair Data Society. And within that, we want to basically create infrastructure for a fair and exchange of data. So we believe that TCRs are going to play a big role in setting up a system that can run trustless and decentralized. Happy to be here.
Cool, thanks for joining. Anyone else, quick intro?
Hi, everybody. I'm Niran. I work at Consensys on a product called Panvala. It's a token system that aims to organize everybody who wants to make Ethereum safer. And it includes a token curated registry of smart contract systems that meet the token holders' security standards.
Sorry.
Hi guys, I'm Katya. I'm a creative director, co-founder at Foam. I know Ryan already presented the project, so I'm interested to be here and excited. It's my first time.
Hi everyone. My name is James, and I'm working on a project called Create with the number 8, and it's basically a system for multi-dimensional curation markets. Really excited to learn.
Thanks. Anyone else? Quick intro. And also, if you're not speaking, if you could mute your microphone, that would be helpful.
Hi everyone, I'm Ainsley from Enigma. We're not building a TCR right now, but we're looking to enable private voting for TCRs. Recently worked on a demo. I think has more info. So maybe here. So cool.
Thanks. Costas, I don't know if you would mind muting. Sometimes some noise kind of comes in from there. All right. Maybe another minute, 30 seconds, if there's anyone else that wants to make an intro, and then we should get started with Consensys.
I'll jump in and say a quick hello, if that's all right. I'm Jeff. I'll be working with Giveth and the Aragon DAC using token bonding curves and curation markets and TCRs for charity and kind of building currency ecosystems around causes directly.
Thanks. All right.
Hey, I'm Alan, and I work at Gnosis with Anton here, and we work on prediction markets. And in the context of TCRs, like conditional market technology and sort of futarchy infrastructure for like potentially TCR that's curated by futarchy.
Thanks, Alan. All right, and if you get a chance to introduce yourself, next call, try and be that one of the first people. And I guess I'm going to hand it over to Andrea to talk about the play tests and experiments that were going on at Consensys.
Awesome. So I'm going to take over all of your screens and put off my headphones because I want you to be able to hear some videos. I'm not quite sure if Zoom allows to do that when you have headphones. So let me know if the sound is bad or if you can't see what I'm going to share. But if no one says anything, I'm just going to assume that you all can.
Okay, cool. And I'll try to time box this conversation into around 2 o'clock.
Awesome. So, as I said, I am part of a spoke inside Consensys. That is to say, a small group or a small startup inside Consensys called the Crypto Product Lab. And in the past 7 months, we've done well, it would be less than that. In the past 4 months, we've done 2 play testing sessions, which I'm going to be explaining a little bit more during this talk. And the idea of having this new type of testing came from a need for a cheap, reliable way to test out ideas. We realized that the way development currently works for blockchain, it's really hard to eventually be able to actually fork a community or change or make big changes in code itself. So we knew that we needed a way to reduce risk in the long term and hopefully in a way that would allow us to do it in a day or 2. So we started with a first attempt that came heavily influenced by my background in game design, and that's actually why we called these new testing sessions that we came up with play testing sessions. So a little bit about me. Most people call me Andy. I'm a design strategist at the lab. And as I said, I have a background in play and in game design, also in filmmaking, but I'm a designer with a heavy background in play. And in play, as you know, specifically in video games, a lot of what you try to do is to test as cheaply as possible as the beginning, because you know you're optimizing for a really hard thing, which is fun. In the case of TCRs, you're optimizing for something even harder, which is the creation of a whole economy that is backed by a community in a decentralized way. So, you know, there's a higher risk, and we were trying to offset that a little bit. So we are defining playtesting here as analog simulations of cryptoeconomic systems. More specifically, we've done it for TCRs, but we do believe you can do this for basically almost any cryptoeconomic system, played by up to 10, maybe 12 humans at the same time. They tend to be really lo-fi, and they don't have a high level of fidelity when it comes to actual computational processes. So we're going to see that in a bit. The way they work is usually you get these 10 people in a room, you get observers around them, and don't worry, I will explain more how you actually plan them out, but you get observers around them, and while the play is happening, you structure it into rounds so that you can be continuously changing aspects of your basic design. So think of it as a way of going beyond the white paper and actually starting to put your assumptions into testing. And eventually, as you see things changing, you can say, okay, well, we really should change this, or we should add rounds, or people are not understanding the concept of a token, or so on and so forth, right? Now, why did we choose to do this? And by the way, actually, before I go on, you will notice, not particularly in this photo, but I have videos that you will see, you will notice that it feels very much like people are playing a board game or some sort of role-playing game. So the big question is, why are we choosing that format for this type of testing, right? And to me, this comes from the very basics of what a game is or how it can be defined. There are many definitions for this, but I particularly like this one by Eric Zimmerman and Katie Salen, based on a really good book that they have around play. I think it's called Rules of Play. So they say that a game is a system in which players engage in an artificial conflict defined by rules that results in a quantifiable outcome. And to me, this couldn't be closer to what we are doing with cryptoeconomic systems, right? At the end of the day, we have a set of rules, we have an artificial conflict, and we have a quantifiable outcome. And it's important to mention that games are not always meant to be happy. There are many instances where people engage in games, for example, in role-playing, where they will actually actively seek to be sad or to play sad or angry situations in order to live them. So I think there's a lot in the concept of games for us, for cryptoeconomic systems, because a game is already a very flexible thing, right? And so in blockchain, when we talk about dApps, or I'm going to say in general systems, but let's talk specifically about things that we are creating for humans to use, right? That are not developers. We design those dApps almost as games in a way, or they have the sense of complexity and the sense of rules that we could actually say, hey, these are games of sorts. So I'll give you, some example of how I see this world of dApps. You have the ones that don't have incentives, that tend to be more far away from games, right? Or that would look simplified. If they were gamified, they would look bad. So for example, gamifying MetaMask. Well, in reality, people are just trying to get a payment done, or they're just trying to see how much they have in their wallet, right? But there are other things like AdChain, for example, that have way more incentives, and people are going to go in with the objective of getting a certain outcome through a set of rules, right? And even in a multiplayer sort of scenario. So when I'm talking about playtesting, we're usually talking about doing it on this second set of dApps. So there is one difference though, and I think this is important for us to take into account, which is that in regular games, you have a storytelling layer, a magic circle layer, that really helps people come into your game. I think in TCRs, we still have to work on that, right? How do people completely consent to these rules that we're presenting to them and understand the risk of them in the real world? And how do we help them understand that the consequences are not like in a game? It feels like a game, but the consequences are more real than a game, right? And I think that's where we have a little bit of a friction, especially when we have games that have higher real world stakes. Like this is not an example of a cryptoeconomic system per se, but I'm just talking here about things like Meridio and like even things like Foam, right? Which is a TCR. They have a different set of real higher real world stakes that we need to take into account. So I'm going to talk about the different playtests that we have. The first one we had in August, and our objective was to basically test the idea of playtests. We had AdChain, and we wanted to figure out why participation was not as high as we wanted it in AdChain. And we have the problem that because this is a cryptographic app, right, we can't actually know who's a part of our final user group, and we hadn't done that before. By the time I had come into the group, we hadn't done that. So we decided to form a group of 10 people, replicate AdChain with these actual humans as a card game, and see if participation was also really low. So in a way saying, okay, well, could we make a mini ecosystem, right? Could we actually figure out if that worked or not? So by the way, I'm going to share these slides, but I'm going to show you the video here directly because it's faster. So here's a video of what that looked like. Can you see my screen, by the way, when I do this? Yeah?
Yeah, we can see your desktop.
Okay, perfect. Okay. It should be on. So I'm going to just fast forward. So what you'll see here is this is the group of 10 people. Please don't share this with anyone, by the way, because many of them wanted to be anonymous. So I will make sure that if you want access to the video, you will have to request access.
We're recording, but we can cut this video out.
Perfect. Thank you. So what you'll notice is they were given a set of rules. How can I describe this? It didn't include the best aspects of game design because the idea was we're going to replicate how AdChain was. So we gave them rules that were printed, just like the tutorials in AdChain. We gave them a set of tokens that they had in this little bags that you can see over here. And I'm just going to show you a clip of them coming to decisions about whether they wanted to apply or not.
Yeah, there's really like a staking thing. So like how many rounds is there? And that's what I'm that's essentially the domain tag. So I can see what
So there's a few interesting things here, right? The first one is, as we were developing this, we were seeing way more communication amongst people than what we actually saw digitally, but it was just as disorderly as what we had digitally on AdChain. So that was an interesting learning for us. They also immediately found ways of winning, quote unquote, in the game as a group, and actually finding the security flaws in the design was a matter of seconds. They didn't need more time than that because the game was so straightforward when done in this way for them. And we also found some interesting things like as more or less a verification of the different types of users that we have talked about before, which was we eventually had, I can point this out more later, but we had a set of trolls, a set of people that were more like participating for the sake of getting the ball rolling. We had people that were really stern, especially these two guys, about their ethics and what it meant to have a good domain being nominated or not. We had people that were very much like leaning back. They didn't get what was happening. They were quiet the whole time. And so it was like an interesting space for us. And we, by the way, I know this is going to be short because we have two, but we have a whole write-up about that. So I'm going to go back here. By the way, the write-up is on Medium right now, and I linked it so you can see more about it. But the important part of this was, let me go back to percent. The important part of this for us was that it actually didn't match completely our digital TCR. Participation was incredibly high. People were having a lot of fun, even though we hadn't designed it for fun at all. People were happy. They wanted to keep playing. They played for hours. They kept asking us about how TCRs worked after this. But it also made us wonder if this amount of fidelity was enough, right? If anything, the playtest failed from the point of view that it didn't actually match what was happening digitally, right? But it was really interesting for us, and my developers can talk about this when we're in the questions portion of this. But it was really interesting because it really proved that if not a good simulation of what is happening already in AdChain, it was a good space for us to ideate about new systems, right? Immediately, everyone on the team that was observing was like, oh, we could do rounds. We could do moments when people are called to vote. We could do this, we could do that. We could add this different type of chat. We could, right? So it was kind of like it opened the floodgates of ideas. So that was really good for us. And then we had a second playtest that was around a specific idea that Mike Bowling had, which was, okay, I have an idea for fixing participation in TCRs. It's going to be participation mining. The gist of it is if you don't participate, your tokens get devalued a little bit. And, excuse me, sorry about that. And we wanted to test out if that would work, while at the same time, right, like bonus objective, we would get to iterate on the last test and go a little bit deeper in terms of how high fidelity the simulation should be. So I'm going to show you just a quick video.
Also, we can't hear what they're saying, so.
Oh, at all?
Not really.
That's interesting. Okay.
It's just echoey, but we can see their tone.
Well, let me just put on my headphones if it's not going to work. Okay. So for sakes of all, I'm just going to keep going on my headphone. But I will show you, okay, I'll tell you what's happening here. So people were actually only supposed to interact with each other on Discord, which actually happened. So that was to try to see if we could get people to participate less on Discord. And we have the full Discord chats, which was very enlightening. We had 2 groups of people. We started off with 1 because we thought, hey, maybe we can do it, I don't know, with 20, 25 people. That was a mess. We couldn't observe any of that. People couldn't interact properly with each other, which was really interesting for us. So we divided them into 2 groups, gave them Discord, gave them the same rules, but made it a more generic TCR that was supposed to be about curating the best Pokemon. And we gave them a database for Pokemon that had the different stats of different Pokemon that all of them could access. So some people were on Discord on their laptops, some were on their phones, and whenever they wanted to nominate Zapdos or Moltres, you will see them talking here, Mike's over here to the right, they would talk to us and we would perform the mathematic processes, the computational processes of actually telling them, did your token go up? Did it go down? What is the value of the token curated registry right now? And then seeing how they reacted to that. So again, what I'm showing you here is just like going to be video, sadly without audio. This one you could actually see, by the way, without blurring their image. But you'll see over here to the back that we had a set of Post-its. That's John, one of our engineers. And John was actually, these Post-its were the Pokemon that were on the TCR. So that was extremely interesting for all of us. So I'm going to stop this here. I'm just going to keep going. And in the second playtest, lo and behold, participation was incredibly high again, like super high consistently throughout the whole thing. Even though we actually gave them roles, and some of them were supposed to be hodlers that would try to participate less or would try to keep, the price up. So that was interesting to us. There's certainly something about human participation that is face-to-face, and how can we recreate that better? And the game was very fun. Everyone actually gave us great feedback afterwards about how much fun it was, which, again, great for us, but also interesting because it's a little bit frustrating from the point of view of what we wanted to get done. So in that process, we started thinking about, okay, well, first question would be, how can we make this all digital, right? And the second question would be, do these playtesting sessions work more for ideation and early stages only, right?
Hey, Andy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question? How are you defining participation? It's just participating in the vote, right?
Yes. Okay. And I will make, by the way, in the next steps, one important question here is, or not question, when it comes to how diligent we were in note-taking and in getting very specific quantifiable data from all their participation and how they were voting and etc. It just became really messy when we had more than 10 people because we had to split our group of observers. So in that sense, for you to have insight into that, we're still having a lot of like quantitative data, that we're compiling and that we're all getting together and looking at it, but we haven't been able to crack the quantifiable data part of it. So that's in the books.
Just to get a picture of just so I understand the context, like were these sessions like about an hour long, or were they kind of like spread out?
4 hours.
Were people, okay, they were 4 hours, like contained sessions. Okay.
Yep. Starting at 12 and then going up until 4, and we gave them a 1 hour. We will give them lunch at the beginning. So they would have 12 to 12:40 for lunch. So yeah, I will go into that in a bit too. And then, you can see some of the, this is a mural that I linked, but you can see how we started taking everyone's feedback and everyone's notes from what happened in the playtest, and we would cluster it and look at insights and look at, okay, well, how did our objectives go, and what were our insights from team A and team B, meaning one group of 10 people and one group of 10 people, and what did we get from both of them? Then we clustered them and we came up with insights. Like I said, the overall conclusion is this is great for beginning stages. We're still trying to think about how to make it even better digitally so that we can keep track of more quantifiable data, 1, but also 2, so that we can better replicate how people would be interacting online, because people are loving this game in person, but the truth of the matter is that participation online is lower, way lower. So there's something there, right, that we need to figure out. So what does planning look like? This is really quickly. Timeline here is we had 2 playtests so far. As I told you, one was the ad chain simulation. The second one was about participation mining. We had plans for more tests by the end of 2018, but we've had to switch a little bit in terms of our roadmap. So we're still TBA around our next product and when the next playtest is going to be. But these have certainly formed a part of just how we are. We're planning a playtest right now for a product idea that we came up with in the last 3 weeks. So that's really interesting for us. It's just a part of how we work now.
We have like a couple minutes left.
Sure. And basic preparations of this are a month before. You should probably begin your test description, getting your objectives together, begin recruiting testers. We have a list of 50 people right now. Begin involvement of your legal team. That's really important. 2 weeks before, lock in, what that test is going to be like. What is the objective? Begin floor plans if you can. These are basically like architectural plans that say, hey, a camera's going to be here and a camera's going to be here and here's where the desk is going to be. A week before, you probably want to confirm your participants, ask for allergies if you're giving them lunch, loop in the final team, make sure that you have enough crypto to pay participants or actual fiat. We've paid most of them with crypto and they said yes to it because for many of them, it was their first experience with crypto. If you have more information about your user base, then you will probably know if you can even pay them in crypto or not. 3 days before, buy any physical resources that you might need. In our case, we need a lot of like fake coins, Post-its, little baggies that have a dollar sign on them, right? Things that just make the game a little bit more fun. Day before, just print out any handouts that you need. Send out a reminder to participants. And day of, we arrive 2 hours early. We set up the space. We make sure that the food arrives, set up handouts, and meet with the team to go through the plan once more. Here's what one of these usually costs. It's around $1,000, which from our point of view is worth it compared to developing for 6 months and then figuring out that a product might not work. And usually these are the type of people, these are the type of people that you need in your team. You need a main organizer, a person that's to be held accountable, a person that's keeping track of timing while the test is going on, observers. The more well-prepared that they are, the better. In the case of us, we've had to make sheets so that observers know what they're looking for. But even then, this hasn't worked for us when we go over 10 people. So just try to keep it at 10 if you're going to keep it this human. If you're going to keep it human too, then try to have someone that's really good at math to actually make up for the process. And that is basically it. Our next steps is implementing tests for the next product, making a fully digital and remote test, and integrating this somehow with machine learning and agent-based modeling, which is a way of saying the same thing. But all of this is to say a way of integrating this with the actual agents that are being created so that we get more human feedback into how people react and how people act in TCRs. Thank you.
Thanks. We have time for like maybe 1 or 2 questions if anyone has any questions to follow up that presentation.
I'm gonna set up this image here so that everyone can see.
I might have missed this, but were people playing for real money?
Yes, they were. The way we did that was they knew they were going to get paid. We said $50 for the full thing. When they came in the first play test, we told them they could leave potentially without money. No one left. So that was interesting because I thought many of them would, get angry at us. But they didn't. Maybe we just got really nice people, but they didn't. And in the end, we still gave them $50 as a minimum. And if they gained anything over that in the play test, we would give them that. It ended up being at most $20 over that. So $70 per person, maybe, right? In the second play test, when they got in, we told them directly, hey, we're not going to take away your $50, but you can play 4 more. So that's the basics of it.
I think what we'll do is, since we're not doing so well on time, let's just save all questions for both presentations until after Claros has gone, and then maybe it's good for comparing the two and whatnot. Yeah, so I'll hand it over. I don't know who from Claros is presenting, but you guys can share your screen if you want, or whatever. Or maybe you're not, you don't need to share your screen.
So Matt will start the presentation, and after I guess William gonna be giving conclusion and remarks about the experiment. So Matt, if you want to start.
If you're talking, we can't hear you, just so you know.
Oh, all right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Can you see my screen as well?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Right. So this is the main screen of the experiment that we've been running for quite some time now. And it's basically a token created list of doges. And similar to the game that you presented previously, we also do this experiments with real economic incentives. So people can get penalized by losing ETH, or they can get rewards for working as jurors and challenging items that should not be on the list. So I don't know if anyone has seen this project yet, but it is very similar to other curated lists that rely on voting, except that we don't do the actual curation happens by jurors. So for an example, we can have an image of a cat here, and someone placed a deposit for it of 0.6 ETH, and then another user realized that this is wrong and challenged it. So there is a 12 ETH at stake, such that if the jurors decide to vote that this is really an image that doesn't have a Doge, then the challenger will receive a reward, and the jurors will receive some fees for their work as well. So as an example, I will just submit a token here. Sorry, a token, not a Doge. I'll quickly download some image of Doge like this. I even have one here. So here the user can select the image, and the UI already tells him what will be the deposit that he will make. So since this is a Doge, probably no one will try to challenge it. And also when a certain period passes, the user gets his deposit back.
Yeah, that's normal. It's because this Doge is already there. If you look at one of the top one on Google, someone has probably already submitted it. So you may want to try to submit something which is not a Doge, which will be way more likely to be there, because the list is starting to become quite comprehensive.
Yeah. So perhaps I'll get an image of some. What was the name of that country, Clement? That
You can just put a cat and show how it gets challenged.
Yeah, but it was interesting for that case where they were putting Doges from like not the dog Doges.
Venice.
Yeah, yep. It was quite smart of them. Hopefully no one submitted this cat.
Does it do an image like search, and it can match the image, or is it by file name?
It hashes the image and see if the image is already in the list.
There's a lot of people using it apparently.
Yeah, that's only now because at the beginning there were almost no collision, but now we start to have some collision of people having already submitted those images, and then we got bugs. But that's quite recent.
Oh, this one is too small. It has a restriction on the size of the image. So I think this should work. I'll just go over this one. Yeah, this one also.
No, like, can you just refresh the page? That's strange that you don't get the cat. The dodge, I guess it's because it was there, but the cat is unlikely to be there. What?
Actually, no.
Have you unlocked your MetaMask?
Yes, it's unlocked. Yep.
Live demos.
Yeah. Maybe someone already submitted this one as well. It would be quite odd. Oh, now it went. Probably something with MetaMask. Just had to open and close it. Actually, it seems like something is.
Well, the transaction has to confirm.
Hang on. Let's see.
Is this like just to demo how the application works?
No. The application works. There is 1,000 image in it, so the application clearly works. I don't know why it's not working now.
I mean like to give a demo. I mean, is it like the segment just to give a demo of how it.
Oh, now it worked. I don't know. Okay, so continuing, the user just makes a deposit, and the image just shows up as once the transaction gets confirmed, it becomes a pending image, waiting for a challenge, or maybe just waiting for the challenge period to pass. So if it passes, then the user can get his deposit back.
People in the chat they want to know, and you guys can also just speak out instead of writing in the chat, how you check for duplicates, how the software knows it's a duplicate.
Oh, it's just a hash of the image.
Okay, hash of the image.
So even if you change one pixel, the software won't see that it's a duplicate anymore. So it's sort of an imprecise measure of whether you see duplicate.
Meanwhile, I will prepare also a demonstration of the jurors. So this other screen that I'm opening here, hopefully everyone can watch, is what the jurors will see when they judge a case. So while the transaction is mining, I'll just wait for it here. Can you hear the narration?
No.
No, but you may want to speak yourself on it.
Oh yeah,
So
no problem.
we can hear someone breathing into the mic.
All right, so this is the dashboard for the jurors, and this is what the juror sees when they have staked PNK, and they can get selected for a case. And depending on the amount of PNK that they have deposited, the chances of them getting selected to be a juror increases. And there's a whole lot of work and research on getting the randomness correct for the selection of the jurors. Then the user needs to make a transfer of this PNK to the Claros contract. Once the user has made his transfer, he can activate the PNK so that he may get selected as a juror, and he may or may not get selected for some case. So that's why we have a video also.
And did they just need to own and stake tokens in order to eventually get randomly selected to be a juror?
Yes.
And how long do they have to respond? Like maybe they're not at their computer for a couple days or something.
Well, perhaps Clement, you can talk about that.
They currently have 1.5 or 2 days, so like around 2 days to give their ruling.
But you don't have to stake at any given period. So if you're a juror and you know that you're not going to be at your computer for the next 2 days, you can just not stake for that period, and then you know you won't be drawn.
Okay, so for this case, the juror has been selected for a case on Doges on trial, and you can see that the details of a dispute there for the two parties and the image of the Doge in question. And this data, some of it is of course stored off-chain for better scalability, but it is fast, and then the users can see the data to make the correct judgment. And this is a part where human input makes a difference, because some AI could look at this image and look at the face of the Doge and be a little bit confused at whether it is a Doge or not. But a human can, of course, make a vote for that. Finally, we have a simple question for the juror to answer. And the juror cannot make some arbitrary choice. It has to be small, or else we don't achieve a Schelling point. So he has to answer the question, is this a Doge or not? And then once he makes his vote, along with the other jurors, once they also make their votes, it will get either accepted or rejected. And the challenger will either receive his reward or lose his stake. Also, the fees that are paid by the losing side only. So both of them make a deposit for the arbitration fees, but the winner gets refunded. Otherwise, it would be unfair for the user.
And the jurors only can gain; they don't lose, right?
So the juror can only gain ETH, but they can win or lose PNK.
Oh.
So now we have our cat, and I guess we want to, we see that there is a picture of a cat with some ETH on it, which can be gained if you successfully challenge it. So someone can see this picture and send it to trial.
There is also some incentive that for purposes of research that has been placed, in case also anyone wants to participate. There is a bounty of 50 ETH for anyone who manages to get a cat on the list. So every time there's people trying to bribe the jurors or trying to make some money. But as of right now, the bounty is still up.
Is there a good amount of participation?
Yeah.
So there were two kind of reward. We gave Dogecoin to Doge submitters, and this payout was already paid. And we also put bounties to put a cat into the list, and this one has not been paying yet. There is now some people which have claimed that they submitted some cat, but like that's something which is not obviously a cat, so it's not really about the game theoretical incentive, but more about tricking people with picture of a cat which look like a Doge. And the guy made a really nice thought about it. because even for me, the picture is clearly a Doge, even after he was able to prove us it was a cat. On the attack, perhaps William can speak a bit more.
Yeah, so we've run a few like attacks ourselves, and then like people in the ecosystem like ran some attacks also beyond what we tried. So far, none of the so there were a variety of different kinds of bribes. In particular, there were some P plus epsilon bribes, which if any of you are not familiar, it's this kind of like bribe where you pay, like if you want X to win, so you want like your image to be ruled as a Doge when it isn't, you pay people if it's finally ruled as not a Doge, and you can sort of shift their like their payout matrix so that they're always incentivized to vote that it's a Doge, but then because the like not a Doge didn't win, you never pay them. So it's this really insidious way to bribe people. But so various kinds of bribes, including that, and so far none of them really worked. We like there were some participants that would vote Doge and clearly hostile images, but particularly as you appealed, like the percentage was always low enough, below 50%, that all those images lost. So we have a couple of thoughts about why that might have happened. Part of it is just that like our current juror pool may be overly altruistic. So there were something on the order of 40 to 50 people that like are unique Ethereum addresses that were participating as jurors. And these are people that are like in Claros early on, or really interested in the project. So they might have like an incentive to not accept the bribe beyond what like, you know, the payout, the win or loss payout for what the result is. It's also possible that like all of the bribes were, some of the bribes or at least were smart contract based. But then if you're going, like even if the smart contract is theoretically trustless, in order to like really be confident in your attacker, you might have to like really like carefully read the smart contract, and it's possible there's like a backdoor and the attacker's trying to trick you. So it's unclear whether the percentage of people willing to accept bribes will be low, like as the juror population moves forward into the future.
Did you get insight into how people were like broadcasting these bribes? Like, was it on your Telegram, or did they have other channels, or did you not have any insight into that?
Yeah, so the most standard way to broadcast that there was a bribe would be to embed in the image, hey jurors, there's a bribe for this image, go to this link and learn more.
That's hilarious.
So for example, for the bribes we did ourselves, we just put a link to like our own forum where like the attacker had like posted the details of the bribe, the link to the smart contract.
Matt, can you show a bit of the image which have some bribes in it?
Yes, I'll see if I can find one here.
Scroll down far enough in the reject list, you'll find them.
Yeah, I remember there being words right in the image saying, hey, jurors,
there's
we'll
one.
pay you.
No,
yeah, exactly.
You just scroll. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot.
There's one. Attention jurors, possible bribes for voting. That is on this Doge, and this one is asking for a people's epsilon attack. But before it was just splitting the rewards. It was not even this.
And then beyond that, like we noticed some interesting phenomenon that like we hadn't necessarily tried to like engineer, just that organically rose up. So for example, like our payout, our like subcourt policy was kind of vague. It just asked, does this image show a Doge? And whereas like on our payout policy for whether you get the reward if you manage to get a cat in, we had like a really detailed payout policy. It's like, you know, like you only get the cat if there's not also a Doge and if it's like visible, blah, blah, blah. So some jurors seem to have at least partially confused these policies. So people, like there was this, like early on when people submitted images that both had cats and dogs, they were very contentious. They had a lot of like close votes going either way. And eventually like a sort of consensus arose where like several images in a row got ruled as not Doges. And then going forward, clearly the jurors had like looked at that previous result and it became sort of precedent, and they kept ruling like that over and over again. So it became predictable if nothing else. That we even had like, we asked, we had like a box, like a text box in our juror dashboard where we asked people, why did you vote the way you did? And so there were people who were like, well, I know this image has a cat and a dog, and according to the subcourt policy, like it should be on the list, but I know everybody else is going to vote this way, so I'm going to vote this way too. So that was interesting to observe.
And even with this simple question, which is it a dodge or not a dodge, there have been a lot of edge cases. So picture with both dodge and cats, pictures with animal with dodge faces, pictures with non-safe for work elements. There have been like when we made the test, we say, oh, we just make a list of dodge and that's going to be clear cut, and so we are going to just be able to study the economic incentive and not the fuzzy is it a dodge or not. But we then realized that it's not really possible to just know if an image is or not in the list, and that there is always this subjective part that is required to the juror. So here you can see that's a dodge, but that's a dodge of Venice. Which got rejected, while I think one other dodge of Venice got accepted. And generally, when you end up into edge cases, it starts by being ruled a bit randomly, and then it converges to one way of ruling. So it really showed that jurors look at previous cases and took into consideration all these fuzzy cases were ruled previously to give their next ruling.
We're at 5 minutes for the call. I think we started like 5 minutes late, so I guess we can go on to the 35. If you have to leave before that, you can leave before that. But I would like to open it up for people to ask questions to Claros at this point about their experiments, if there's something that you haven't heard that you still want to know.
So how effective was this experiment for you? And before you answer that, what I want to frame it in is that one thing that we found in our experiments is that testing the curation mechanism is just as important as what the objective of the TCR is, right? So people react to the curation mechanism in relation to the objective of the TCR. So I was wondering how you plan to take the learnings from this and implement it in Claros, since it's so different in terms of objective of the TCR itself. Does that make sense? How will you take the learnings into Claros?
The learnings?
Yeah, so going in, like, we had clear objectives in terms of being able to sort of see our vulnerabilities to certain kinds of attacks. Like, you can have whatever theoretical model you wanted, like, okay, perfectly rational jurors will rule in such and such a way. But we wanted to like have some like sort of live sense of whether like such and such attack is likely to influence people, and sort of how we have to adjust our parameters and things like that to defend ourselves against such attacks. And we've gained, some information, some learning on with respect to that. And beyond that, like there was an exploratory quality to this, where it's like we hope to sort of see emergent phenomena that maybe we hadn't expected. Beyond that, like not necessarily beyond like a controlled experiment, but it's like, okay, do the jurors going to surprise us somehow? And like in some small ways they have, and in other ways, like they've acted in ways might have been predictable, and that sort of comforted us that like crazy things won't happen. But so there's some learning to be taken directly towards our like parameter choices going forward, and beyond that, thinking about like, okay, like is it like how are we going to like handle our like commit and reveal mechanism for like voting, and like how is this like how important that actually is? Do jurors actually like questions like that? Or we've gained some light on them, but we have more to study.
So we really have to see this more as some kind of a cryptoeconomic bug bounty, where we started with a use case which was made to be funny and made not to be that a problem if something goes wrong. Like if something goes wrong, people see cats, that's fine. No one is going to be really affected by that, and give incentive for people to try to break it. And people try to break it. We saw that they did not manage to break it through cryptoeconomic incentive. So that's a way to comfort that the economic incentives that we set up are working, at least for this particular use case. Then the takeaway are, if there is no specific rule, or if the rules are not clear enough, people are gonna make rule or refer to rule which were not even really made for that. So we saw that people were referring to the period policy to accept or reject image into the TCR, even if the period policy does not really have any link with the question which was asked to the jurors. We saw the emergence of case law. We saw that we cannot make systems which are not subjective. People are still going to be able to find edge case which ultimately end up being subjective, and that's, I think it's a vain trial it's a vain task to try to make a TCR which is completely objective. We saw that the P-epsilon attack, even if it was the most successful one in terms of jurors taking the bribe, we were still really far from getting 50% attack, well, getting more than half of the juror accepting the bribe. I think in the worst case, we got 1/3 of the juror which took a bribe in a P-epsilon attack. We saw that basic bribes, which were not smart contract and first, had absolutely zero effectivity because no one is gonna trust someone which tried to bribe. Someone which tried to bribe is someone which is by nature untrustworthy. So no one accepted bribe which were not smart contract enforced. And we also saw people which were then trying to scam the briber by pretending to be juror and wanting to be paid while they were not even juror in this case. So it was really like an exploratory project to make sure you cannot easily break the cryptoeconomic incentive of the system.
Thanks. We have like kind of 5 minutes left, but it's really the end. So I didn't know if anyone else had any questions for Andrea or Andy or Claros, or whether there was something else that someone wanted to mention in this call for experiments, because this was supposed to be the free-for-all, I guess, time. So does anyone have any more questions or something that they would like to say to the group?
Yeah, I have a quick question. First of all, just want to say great presentations, and I really appreciate the knowledge you shared. My question is for Andy, though. What were the findings? Could you just give a summary of what you learned from both of the play tests, and especially the second one?
Sure. So in terms of TCRs themselves, having spaces for people to come at defined times during the day to vote, what's really important. So having these calls for action that are not always ongoing, like TCRs currently are. And those could be through offering, I don't know, more money at a certain time of the day, or having a certain kind of features like chat only be available during certain times of the day or something like that can be really interesting. That's one thing that came up for us. Oh, rounds are important, right? So we were like, oh, we should start thinking about how humans could do that online. That was one. The second one was how to really help people understand why you're doing commit and reveal. That's like a really simple one, but it was very easy to us to explain it in terms of cards, right? The game became so easy to understand in terms of cards, whereas when we had people online, we had to explain a lot how a TCR works. When we made it into a card game, it was so easy. So, impactful for us was to say, oh, how are we teaching people how this game is played? We need to work more on that and make it simpler. And then there was something really interesting that we tried, and I still don't know quite where it's going, but it has to do with how we started trying to get people, by the way, participation mining seems to work. But more interestingly, so when it comes to actually incentivizing people to participate more, we still have questions around does it have to do with being surrounded by other humans and really being able to pay attention to them? Or does it have to do with your personal intention going into the system? And if we look at the playtesting that we had, it seems like a big part of being a part of a TCR could be just being in community. So for us, that became interesting, right? Like, oh, should we be thinking about community more? And that's just some. We have more than those, but I think those are an interesting group of things to think about, right? How do we really create that community feeling in a TCR, because it seems to go even beyond that. Oh, and one important part, this is really important, I forgot about this, is how do you keep shrimps, which is the opposite of whales, how do we keep shrimps, people that don't have a lot of money, by the way, props to Isaac Can, because he came up with that term. How do we keep shrimps active? Because without them, the community slowly dies. And we notice that at least in our playtest, they would have a voice, right? That seemed to permeate everyone else, but this doesn't happen digitally. So we were like, oh, we need to start thinking about that, because that's a problem that we had digitally that seemed to be solved. And we were like, oh, okay, well, if this got solved almost without us meaning to, I wonder how we can do that.
Awesome. That's a
Cool.
really good point.
Yeah, thanks so much.
We're at time. I wish we had, I'm sure there's like so many more things we could say, but this call, I guess, tried to jam pack so much into such little time. So I'll work on that for next time. I'm thinking for the next call, maybe the holidays, we do something mid-January instead of at the end of January, just to make up for that time, and then continue in February. So I'm thinking, yeah, so I guess we'll catch up in the Telegram or in January. And let's think of something else we talk about next time. Yeah, thanks for joining.